Hi, my name is Okimoto, and I was a farmer for 35 years. I owned Nalo Farms, and I quit in 2018, mainly because of climate change really hit us bad that year. We had 4 storms. I was also president of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Brian was my executive director for most of that time. We started the farmers market when I was there, several of the farmers markets at that time. Currently, I am chair of the Hawaii Agricultural Foundation, which we do a lot of educational things in agriculture, not only with farmers, but with the public. We put on an Eat, Think, Drink, which educates the public about agricultural issues. We run a 200-acre farm, 200-acre area where we lease out land to farmers that, and we try to help these farmers. We want them to eventually scale up. Yeah, so we want to grow agriculture is what a lot of the Ag Foundation's mission is, along with teaching children about agriculture. So we are in the schools. We have programs at the elementary, intermediate, and high school levels. And currently, I now consult for Tamura's. So I'm still in the food kind of business. I run most of the poke for Tamura's, and but I still have a great interest in growing agriculture and making sure that there's a good connection between farmers and restaurants and hotels, and also looking at different ways really to eventually sustain our community as far as helping those that can't feed themselves, those kinds of issues that I think is probably one of the biggest challenges for us going forward. And I think Phil is probably one of the lead guys in that area as far as trying to help bridge that gap.
Aloha, my name is Brian Miyamoto. I'm the Executive Director of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. I'd like to thank Luffy Hanneman and HLTA for inviting myself with this esteemed group of panelists and moderators to talk about food security. The Hawaii Farm Bureau, we're a statewide umbrella agriculture organization that advocates for farmers and ranchers throughout the state, at the state legislature, and working with our administration. Basically, farmers and ranchers are busy out in the fields, out on their farms. So we're the voice of agriculture. We're like the Chamber of Commerce for farmers and ranchers. We do a lot of outreach, a lot of education. Some of the things that we do are farmers markets, again, to support the viability and profitability of our farmers and ranchers. We also put on the state farm fair, along with many of the county agricultural fairs that you see scattered throughout the state on the different islands. So again, to HLTA, it's a privilege and honor being here today.
Aloha, my name is Phil Acosta. I'm the Executive Director for Aloha Harvest. I have been with Aloha Harvest since September 2019, so fairly new to the organization, but I've been working in the nonprofit sector for several years now. A little bit about Aloha Harvest, if you're not familiar. Pre-COVID, our bread and butter was our mission is built around food rescue. And so prior to the pandemic, year over year, we would average anywhere from 1 million to 1.5 million pounds of food that we would rescue from restaurants, from the hotels, from our farmers, from grocery stores, wholesalers, and distributors. And we've been doing that since 1999. When the pandemic hit, just like everybody else, we had to do a pivot and shift our operations. Since the beginning of the year, we've actually doubled the volume of food that we have rescued from many of our partners in the community. But also, we've started to do something different, and we started to actually purchase food, and we started to host these food distribution events around town. And since April, our last count is over 200 events, serving over 50,000 households, equating to about 1.5 1,000,000 pounds of food, which is crazy. And that's just stuff that we're now purchasing, and that's in addition to the food that we rescue. And like I said earlier, that has since doubled. And so that really highlights a lot of the need that was already existing, that's been exacerbated by this pandemic. And I'm hoping that we can get into some really good discussion here today and see what we can do moving forward, from different aspects of the community. And really glad to be here. Thank you.
Aloha kako. What's up, everybody? My name is Mark Noguchi. Friends and family call me Gooch or Chef Gooch. I'm a cook. Been cooking for 20 years. I'm the oldest in my family, hailing from Mano, Oahu, and Hilo, Hawaii. I'm a proud father of two, a proud husband to Amanda Noguchi, and the two of us formed Chef Hui and our other company, Pili Group. I think that for everybody, especially being in this esteemed company of everyone on the panel, all of us here in our respective fields have this fervent belief of being of service. And I think that that is the common bond that brought us all here together today. And in this time of COVID, one of the most amazing, despite all the hardships, one of the most amazing things coming out of this was our ability to galvanize, to come together, to collaborate, to share, to lean into one another. And so I think that it'll be a wonderful conversation on sharing how we lean into community, how we support each other, how we support co-producers, farmers, chefs, consumers, etc. So, yeah, so mahalo for having us. Mahalo for having me.
So we're going to look at this issue from first global level, the food insecurity worldwide, what you guys see, and then take it to Hawaii and see what you guys all see from your perspective and from your industries going forward, where food insecurity happens, and possibly what can be done to mitigate the situation. I think it's a huge problem, and it's not even due to the COVID, but it's been happening for many years. I think COVID has made it worse, but let's take a look at what your perspectives are on this. Anybody want to start?
I mean, what community is food secure? Globally, I think food insecurity impacts every community, every country, every state. Here in Hawaii, according to Feeding America, it says 1 out of 9 people in Hawaii struggle with hunger. Another survey says that 8% of the people in Hawaii are food insecure. So, it is an issue that we need to address. When we talk about food security, what is food security? Food security, I had to look up to make sure that I had it right. And everywhere you go, it's about access to sufficient quantity of affordable and nutritious food. You always hear nutrition and affordability. And I think Phil can really speak to, especially what Aloha Harvest does as far as food rescue, such an innovative idea and concept, because we're very used to or a lot of people are more aware of what the food banks do. Phil had something else, which was great. They were they had a booth at the KCC Farmers Market, and it was amazing on what they're able to do with ultimately what probably would have ended up as waste, and to repurpose that and to provide it for the many families in our community that are in need. Just a couple of other numbers here. Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center, located on the west side, they say certain communities, such as their Waianae community, is at the 40% food insecure. And then you've got the Hawaii Appleseed Center, who does a lot of work in this area, saying our kupuna, are 5 to 10% food insecure here in the state of Hawaii. So you can see it's a problem, it's an issue, and it's hopefully something that, all of us here in Hawaii can help to address. But farmers and ranchers in Hawaii are trying to increase their production so that we can produce more, so that we are more resilient and have more local food here and import less, because We hear it all the time. We've always heard it. What happens when the port shut down, if there's a strike or a hurricane or a tsunami? Well, we got hit with something that nobody expected. And right now we recognize that there are a lot of gaps. And, we're speaking to an industry that's been severely impacted, the tourism industry, our hospitality industry, we really need to address this. And unfortunately, it took a pandemic to really focus and shine the light on how bad it is, and, we've got folks like Chef Gooch with creating the Chef Who in the Pili group and what they're doing, again, innovative, entrepreneurial. He said a couple of things. I just want to add on what his wife said at last week's Chamber of Commerce, all the same thing, the partnerships, the relationships, collaboration, galvanizing, sharing, all of these things are going to help us address food security or food insecurity.
Let me ask you guys this too then. Okay, on top of that, when you talk about food insecurity, a lot of it is affordability of food. And, with our agriculture here in Hawaii, our high cost of land, labor, all those things. And, no matter what, a farmer's not going to farm unless they're making money. So that's part of it too. So how do you balance keeping the farms alive and making money and yet feeding the people that cannot afford a lot of the foods that are being produced locally? What's needed? So there's something missing. There's a connection. And I think Phil's organization is one piece to connect in that. But over and beyond that, how do we solve some of these issues of getting food to the people that really need it and don't have it, and getting them nutritious food, which would be local food more than, getting it from the mainland?
I want to go back, chime in a little bit and go back on some of the things that Brian had mentioned as far as the numbers and the statistics. And it's kind of staggering that, you read one report, it says 1 in 9 people are food insecure. You go down Waianae or you go look at a Native Hawaiian population or whatever, that goes down to, what did you say, 40%? I don't even know what that is. Is that one out of every 3 or 4 people? That's kind of crazy how when you go back to the definition of food insecurity, is that access to food, right? There's certain pockets in the community, there's certain demographics that just does not have the same access to food that I do, that Gooch does, and Brian and Dean does. And oftentimes, for us, Aloha Harvest, when we look at hunger and food insecurity, it's not a matter of not having enough food. It's just some people just don't have access to it. And so I think that's one of the things that we can work to bridge that gap, in that these underserved communities or populations, we can facilitate that. And I think there's a lot of things that we could do as far as making best use. I would say best use, not better use, but best use of the resources that we have. And one of the things that, I really got excited about, during this time of COVID, was these partnerships that we built, working with Chef Hu and Gooch and his guys there. We had, not a lot, but we had some opportunities where they pumped out some pretty awesome stuff that came from otherwise would have been scraps. Yeah. And so I love that. I love that option. I love that the creativity, folks coming from different perspective, but we have the same mission, right? Is trying to address the issue of hunger.
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm doing here. You guys are saying it all, but I kind of feel that living on Hawaii is a double-edged sword, right? So as far as food insecurity is when resources, whether it's monetary, whether it's access, what have you, is taken away, right? Or is lessened from one demographic to another. And here in Hawaii, I think because we live on an island, that challenge is exactly, it's increased because of our lack of resources. However, on the flip side of that, what I see is I've seen an amazing call to arms, an amazing galvanization during this time. And so the way that I kind of look at it is, if we can do the work that we do on an island with finite resources, we serve as an example to the rest of the world, right? It's like, we can do this here. Imagine what we can do elsewhere with more resources. And that to me is sort of the key, right? Dean, you just sort of brought up the question of how can we provide local food, better food to our community. You know, I had this conversation with the Rapoons about it a long time ago. When I first opened up the pier, you know, Uncle Charlie guys were like, so Gooch, what can we do for you, right? You know, what if you had a blank slate and you could have like a wish granted, what would it be? So at first I was like, well, wouldn't it be great if the price of taro could drop so that more people could have access to it? And Uncle chewed me out, and he was like, why you gotta make things cheaper? Why can't you start the dialogue of understanding that is your kuleana, is our kuleana, our responsibility to make the consumer understand that there's a reason why kalo costs $4 a pound. And if you understand how taro is grown and the amount of time that it takes to grow it, you understand that every cent is accounted for. And so what I feel is that with the way that we talk, the way that we share these ideas, the way that we share inspiration, the way that technology has allowed us to get together on Zoom, right, and share like-minded and inspirational thoughts, I feel that that dialogue will allow the greater public to understand that, yes, taro is more expensive than potato. However, every cent stays here. All that money goes back, right? And hopefully, by continuing that dialogue, we allow farmers the chance to make a living. Dean, you know of all people, about say 15, 20 years ago, how many under 30 wanted to be farmers? And you look now with the proliferation of many farm to table groups, Ma'o farms, the thing that you guys did with Hawaii Ag Foundation and Eat Think Drink, you have this generation of youth that are more willing to do that work now. And I'm not trying to paint a rosy picture, and I understand that we still have these incredible challenges, but the innovative work and the inspirational work that people around our Pai'aina are doing, I'm hopeful.
How do you think COVID is affecting the food insecurity issue? Is it better, or is it even worse? I think it's worse as far as food insecurity, but is it bringing knowledge to people that what food insecurity is, and maybe people starting to think more about some solutions to our problems? What do you guys think?
So Dean, before I'm going to do it, Phil, to back up a little bit to your previous question about what do we need to do for ag, and I think you started it, and then Chef Gooch hit the nail on the head. Understanding that farming is a business, and I think if more in the public would understand that farmers need to be profitable because they have expenses, they have, like you said, their land, their leases, they have water, right? Just because it rains, that doesn't mean that's how you irrigate. You need access to affordable water. They have labor, they have their inputs that they still have to bring in from the mainland because we don't produce a lot of that here. Invasive species, food safety, transportation issues. So again, all of these costs, and not a lot of people know, Dean's been an advocate of what you said, Chef Gooch, about why do the Hawaii farmers have to lower their costs? They do because they want to compete with the mainland, but our products are the freshest, the most nutritious,
right,
and the longer shelf life because it was harvested yesterday. So let's sell it for a fair price. But again, when we talk about food insecurity or food security, we're talking about affordability. What do we need? We need an investment. We need a larger investment in agriculture. Our legislature, our leaders, elected leaders are great in supporting agriculture. We're just asking for more. We've said it over and over where the State Department of Ag gets less than 0.5% of the state budget. Let's go and invest a little bit more. So segueing into your discussion about how has COVID affected food insecurity. Well, what do we have? Almost 250,000 people unemployed since March. That many more people became food insecure or understood to a certain extent what it was like to be in need and never were. We've seen, you know, all of us here have done these food distributions, Chef Gooch, Phil, and I've personally seen folks in there that in line that probably would never think they'd be there.
Yeah.
They never thought they would be in the situation where they were in need. So it has highlighted and it's exposed a lot more people to what food insecurity is. Again, you know, I think it impacts everyone. COVID has hit everyone to some level. So your question, how's it impacted? A lot more people, in my opinion, are food insecure right now. And food security is a lot higher top of mind with a lot of more people. But what it's also done for our local farming and ranch communities, you know, it's helped to elevate the need to support our Hawaii farmers and ranchers because we know we need to produce more.
So do you guys think that because of COVID and because of this, you know, amount of people that are unemployed and are experiencing food insecurity like never before, is it an opportunity for us to teach these people that, you know, by eating and supporting local, okay, you know, like Gooch said, you rotate the money within our communities, right? But over and beyond that, is it an opportunity for education for these people to learn that, hey, you know what? It's better to eat that taro rather than that gluten-full bread or whatever. You know what I mean?
Or the Idaho potato.
Those types of things, and it's like, you know, the food bank and stuff. Everybody that when they do their can donation drive, you see a lot of spam and stuff like that and things like that. Yet, you know, maybe with something like this happening, people will realize that, hey, that's not really the most nutritious way to eat and the best way to eat, you know, and maybe start giving, you know, more fresh produce, more fresh fruits.
I think
Like,
early, yeah, I mean,
look,
early on in our COVID response, you know, Chef Hui and Low Harvest, we partnered up on a couple of kind of like trial runs, I guess, with, you know, how we were gonna do these food distributions, and we took a shot at it. And then I think one of the things that we wanted to, you know, to include was just really a good selection of food ingredients that they can get access to, that people can relate to, and, you know, really make a nutritious meal out of. Just so one, yes, there's a limited resource that we need to work with, but also at the same time, there's a lot of people that we're trying to feed. And I think there's great opportunity there, Dean, when you talk about education and things like that. I'll challenge that statement a little bit and say, maybe it's not the people that needs education. You know, Brian had brought it up earlier as far as at the you know, legislation, and that's where the action needs to happen. How are you gonna, how am I, the regular consumer, going to support the farmer if I don't even know what that looks like, right? There's a lot of things in the messaging, in the advertising, and to be truthful, I never bought kalo and uwala since this pandemic. I never even tasted it. You know, like I eat stuff that was maybe processed before. And then, you know, since then I've been exposed to a lot of these different things, a lot of different farmers, a lot of different products, local products that I never would have tried before. And that's just by circumstance and, you know, unfortunately, but we need to do more of those directed, targeted towards the regular consumer. And that push needs to come from above. We need that support to come through. Yeah, only so much that at the consumer level can do without that greater visibility that we could get with more researches.
That exposure to those products, and I'd love to hear Chef Gooch, because I know he's been instrumental, and our culinary industry has been in exposing Hawaii residents to the different, I mean, the diversity of crops that we have. But I mean, Phil, you hit it again, that exposure, and Dean, that's something that's positive about these the food distributions, the food prep, the meal prep, where we are using it. And the food bank, we partnered with them, and you know, they bought $2 million worth, I think, of local produce when they could have bought from the mainland. They made a conscious decision, like Phil did. We met with Phil prior to last session. But anyway, I mean, Chef Gooch, you know, again, I agree with Phil, that exposure, exposing even someone like me who's in the industry to these different crops and how to prepare them into a dish that now I'm comfortable with and I want to cook myself. I think that's critical for helping our industry and helping those families in need.
Yeah, I would concur with all those statements there, because you know, Dean, I think COVID brought the subject of food insecurity to the main stage, right? You know, local style, we don't, right? In Japanese, there's that old phrase "gamashite nasai," which basically translates to "shut up and take it," and we don't grumble about anything. So and you also don't talk about the hardships, yet this pandemic put in front of our faces whether we want to address it or not. And what I believe the blessing of that came from is that all of a sudden, right, in all the different professional groups or socioeconomic groups, the different professions that we're in, everybody has their own idea of, you know, food insecurity, or we have our own idea about issues in general. Yet COVID putting this on a platform allowed all of us to look at the subject at the same time through different eyes. And not only that, through the desire and the act of collaborating, we are now inspired by people that we might not necessarily become inspired by on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, hunger doesn't give a shit how much money you make. Hunger knows no socioeconomic boundaries. You know, Phil, you said it correctly, right? Those couple food drives that we did together. You know, you see Lexuses and you see a Mercedes roll up, and I'm sorry, my first impression was like, what the heck are you doing in line? But then very quickly, we understood that they lost their job too. So did COVID exacerbate food insecurity? Yes.
Okay.
But more so, it brought it to everybody's face, whether we like it or not. So we have to address it as a group. We have to address it as a community.
I think, you know, when you read it, maybe there's some conversation that needs to go around redefining food insecurity. Because if you lost your job and you went without 1 or 2 paychecks, I would say you're friggin' insecure, right? Same thing. Now we have the big thing now is the rent relief, right? Because some, you know, unemployment is running out, or, you know, folks are now, the furlough becomes a permanent layoff. So there's a lot of these things where, you know, really we look at the economy and look at where folks are at. There really is a lot more people that are insecure. So maybe there's some definition, some conversation that needs to go around that. And, you know, let's redefine what that really means. What is insecure? I mean, looking at folks at the Lodging and Tourism Association, their members, so many of their folks are out of work right now. And, you know, that it's kind of, I drive through Waikiki. It looks so odd. It just doesn't feel right. You go into a store, you go into a restaurant, or whatever is open, right? It just has a very different feeling. And, you know, that saddens me. I mean, I'm glad that we're part of the conversation and part of the solution, but it saddens me at the same time that I'd like to do more.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
and Phil, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dee.
you guys see all of this, right, going on in Waikiki, and a lot of those workers are part of the insecure. You're talking right now to a lot of hotel and industry, tourism industry executives and people in the industry right now. How do you think, besides the normal marketing issues like putting a farm's name on their menu and, you know, educating the tourists of what we have here in Hawaii, besides those things, what else can the tourism and hotel industry do to help with food insecurity, not only for their members, but for the general public and the people who aren't making it right now?
So you know, we've been talking again, meeting with Phil, meeting with the food bank prior to the legislative session, and these discussions now during this pandemic about food insecurity. One of the ways that our leaders, all our business leaders and our community can help is helping us advocate for funding, uh, dedicated funding for the food banks. I mean, even putting together a rainy day fund for the next pandemic, where that funds could be immediately released to help support organizations like the Hawaii Food Bank and our neighbor island food banks like Aloha Harvest, like Chef Hui, that can very quickly pivot and not only support our farming industry, but also those families that are in need. I mean, support both communities, you know, keeping the money here, but again, the focus is on food security, getting the food to them. The need is never going to go away. So we'd love to see some dedicated funding for these organizations that are doing these community feeding programs year round, right? The food bank was here before COVID. They're here now, just expanding what they're doing, but they'll be here after if we ever recover at the level that we want. The need will still be there. Those numbers that we shared earlier are pre-COVID, right? That's not COVID. I don't even know what those numbers are with COVID. So, you know, support your local food banks, support your local nonprofits that are helping with these feeding, you know, with bodies or volunteering or with cash donations. Support your local farmers and ranchers. How farmers markets, buy local at the supermarkets. And for those that have the means right now, really support your local restaurants. We in the ag industry depend on our chefs and our cooks and these restaurants, you know, to purchase the local ag products. Again, not everybody has the means, but if you have the means, do that now, but also become our partners. Galvanize, as Chef Gooch said, when the legislative session rolls around or at the county level, you know, they are helping, but we could use more help, not just for the ag industry, but again, you know, this pandemic has really opened my eyes to the great work that, you know, the Kauai Food Bank, Kauai Independent Food Bank, the Hawaii Food Bank, the Maui Food Bank, and Hawaii Food Basket, along with Phil. I mean, we knew what Aloha Harvest was doing, and their quick pivot, partnering with Chef Gooch. I mean, so many other organizations, Lana Kila, Hawaii Meals on Wheels, all these groups, you know, they get their support from donations, dedicated funding. I think having the resources there will help address some of these food security, and in turn, we in the ag industry, we're going to benefit also. This is just from the Farm Bureau, because again, there's so many organizations. Our estimate right now from COVID is almost $4 million worth of local proteins and produce being purchased for these community feeding programs. That's a lot. That's a lot of food that, quite frankly, may not have anywhere to go to. We're speaking to an industry that we really depended on, the hospitality industry. You got Chef Gooch here, the restaurant industry, okay? Cruise ships shut down, even some farmers markets. DOE shut down from the farm to school program. The swap meet had shut down for a while. All of these retail markets that our farmers depended on had shut down. The philanthropic community partners came in initially and funded a lot of these programs, and then county and state also came in. But these food bank purchases, the Aloha Harvest purchases, Phil would go out to the North Shore to pick up a couple 100 pounds of lettuce from a farmer who didn't have anywhere to sell it. All of these programs have gone a long way to help feed our friends and our neighbors and our families in need, but also help to keep the farmers farming, because if we want food security and grow more here, we got to provide them an income. If our farmers shut down, they're not reopening, right, Dean? I mean, you know better than most. I mean, you've been in that business. Farming is first and foremost a business, and if you are losing money, why are you going to keep farming, and how are you going to keep farming?
Yeah.
Gooch, what are your thoughts?
I think that, you know, going back to how do we get our government aboard, I think our government will support us financially if they find reason to, right? And that's this whole dialogue as industry people, whether you are a CEO or you're a line cook. If you start to understand these concepts of, you know, how we provide better food to our community, the more that we talk about it, the more as political constituents, they start to understand that the people that are voting for me want this. Therefore, I would like to go to bat for that. And it's this group effort, that moves forward. And another thing that's important is that whether you are a line employee or an executive, that you truly begin to understand how easily it is for any of us to become food insecure. One term that I had only heard about but didn't really know anything about until COVID was ALICE, right? So asset limited, income constrained, employed, meaning that it's close to like 50% of our population is a paycheck away from financial disaster. Like that, off the top of my head, that's almost everybody in our service industry. All of us have lived paycheck to paycheck. A lot of us still live paycheck to paycheck. But we are 808, we're going to do it. This is our home, and we're going to suffer through that no matter what. So to bring that challenge to the larger picture, to the CEOs, to the transplants that don't have to worry about ALICE. Those are the ways that I think you sort of tap into that empathetic nerve. And that's how, through dialogue, we can get a greater sort of support, I think, politically, but only if we're all on the same page.
You guys are thinking that, okay, maybe that the tourism industry with their political clout can help the legislature understand that, well, and hopefully they're seeing during this time of this pandemic that that we are that close to not having food for a lot of our people. So they need to invest in making sure that one, we can get the food to the people, and at the same time, I mean, it's almost like everything should be a double-edged sword. Where if you support if you give the money to the farmers to buy the food and distribute it to the people, then you're also taking care of the farmers, keeping them above water, and keeping the people that their food can feed above water also. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you guys is I think that's probably the best way for HLTA or the tourism industry to help the overall food insecurity issue, to help agriculture, to help our communities get fed by going to the legislature and telling them that, hey, these are the things that, if you solve it, it all comes together, and it doesn't only help one industry, it helps the whole community. And I think I'm getting that from all of you guys, that's really what we're looking at. Another thing is, like, I don't know if people really understand the ag industry in how we get the food to the restaurants, to the hotels, to the general public. It's like, how long does it take to grow bananas, for example, or lettuce. There's a huge difference between the two, right? Lettuce takes a month and a half. Bananas take 8 to 10 months, and then in that whole time, you can get a wind and go knock down the banana tree and you're not gonna get nothing, right? So, all of those things, I think that the public doesn't understand or see, because we're not vocal enough about it. We need to be selling at this time, because of it's a perfect opportunity to educate the people about what every industry does, and including Gooch. You going on, maybe you should be doing some cooking show with all the leftovers that Phil gives you. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are ideas we've definitely talked about. I think though that not just in COVID has also given a lot of people more incentive to cook at home. I think that the average consumer has no idea how long an avocado tree takes before it starts to fruit, because not that many people take the time and effort to grow an avocado tree. But during this time of COVID, we've seen a lot. We've seen Koala Nursery, and I've seen a line out the door with people just buying plants and trying to learn how to grow things, and that itself builds awareness. So I
Fukuda seeds.
hopefully, yeah, right.
Fukuda
Yeah.
seeds, running out of seeds.
Yeah, that's right. Like, that's amazing. So you couple that with these innovative projects, right? You need to diversify the media, the way that we share the news, whether it's Aloha Harvest and Chef Hui collaborating on, doing kitchen sink dishes. It's with Brian and Yuro Hana talking more about, shining the light on farmers and how long it takes, and that sort of unified voices speaking together amplifies the message.
Yeah.
I want to chime in a little bit on some of the things that Dean and Brian had brought up earlier about just supporting the local farmers and bringing in those products into the hotels and bringing them into the restaurants. I'd love to see where at the hotel industry, supported by our government as well, is to get the people out. Actually, get the people out into the farms and into the restaurants outside of Waikiki. I mean, I love my Starbucks and my Cheesecake Factory, but we all indulge every now and then, right? But take them to Kamuki, right? Take them to Aiea or North Shore or something. Just pop in. These are the kind of things that, if there was given enough support, I think, and we can help the small businesses or directly at the farms be more attractive to the tourists that come, and then really give them that experience. Because it's one thing for you to pick up something at the gift shop on your way out, but for you to actually experience that, you'll take that with you, and then you'll remember what that dish was that you ate at Chef Gooch's restaurant. You'll remember that piece of fruit or whatever that you never tasted before. But those are the kind of things that I think can create some momentum and can build over time, not just like a one-time purchase, but you start to create lifetime consumers of Hawaii and the stuff that we're trying to market. And
Phil, part of that concept, is something that Dean did back in 2003, the KCC Farmers Market, which, by the way, Dean, I'm going to throw in a plug, is reopening this Saturday, finally, after being closed since March. But that's the whole idea. Again, it was for the locals. It still is for our local community, but we do have tourists there, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with exposing them and introducing them to the great diversity of Hawaii-grown products that we have, not only fresh fruits, veggies, and proteins, but the value added, our manufacturers that are using the local, the off-grades, our hot food producers, right? So, it's a really great environment to do exactly what you're talking about, Phil. I agree. Ag tourism, it's still a growing industry within two industries, agriculture and tourism, extremely important. And yeah, you're right, Dean, going back to the education, from your microgreens, which take a couple of weeks, so as you said, bananas or papayas, which takes, a month, close to a year to actually, bear fruit. So understanding that these different crops have different timetables and it takes different times to grow them. And farming is a long-term business. When we talk about ranches, it's years, right? These ranches have to go years. So again, going back to what has been done during this pandemic to support our agriculture community really helped, because again, our farmers were ready to scale down, right? Really scale down. If they didn't have a market for their product, why are they going to keep putting that money into the ground, paying for all of their inputs, for their labor, for their water, if when they're done, harvesting would even incur even more debt because they couldn't sell these products. So to be able to sell it and not just donations, but actually have folks buy it, folks like Aloha Harvest and the food banks buy it, really went a long way. Supporting our agriculture industry, because again, if we want to be food secure as a community, we know as farmers that we need to increase our production. And again, it goes down to, you folks at HLTA, you can really support us at the legislature. The more support we have for agriculture, the better it is. A lot of our voices are, and hopefully we get a larger share. We know that money is going to be tight. We know, everybody knows that coming to the next session and subsequent legislative sessions. But during this pandemic, food security, agriculture, as far as diversifying Hawaii's economy, has always come up. Now's our opportunity, and let's continue with the momentum that we have. You know, this pandemic sucks. It really does. And, you know, we can bring up what's the silver lining. The partnerships are the positive. I don't know if there's any silver lining. Talk about the food supply chain that you talked about, Dean, from farm to consumer, which includes, you know, the process and distribution, retailer, consumer. COVID brought a lot of gaps up, but it also helped us build and strengthen our relationships with folks like Cisco and HFA and Waihata and Diotani and Armstrong, where we need these partners. We're utilizing some of these at some of the food distributions, but also to help get the stuff from the farms to the distributions or to the small nonprofits. It's critical. That's the food chain, supply chain is critical to understand. And admittedly, we in the ag industry have not done the best job telling our story. So we need to do better to tell our story.
Fine. We only got a couple more minutes. So guys, what's the one thing that you guys want that general manager or that hotelier or that tourism executive out there to remember from our conversation going forward? What do you guys think?
One thing? That's hard.
Yeah.
I'll start. You know, for me, again, going back to the bread and butter, to what's core to the mission of Aloha Harvest is, you know, wasting less food, feeding more people. It's really a very basic premise. And when we talk about sustainability and resiliency of this island state, we gotta do a better job of making use of the stuff that we have. So, you know, as they bring in, as tourism comes back, as the buying power, you know, comes back, and, you know, more tourists come, they've already, you know, that's already built into their cost. I'd love to see more of the hotels get involved in, you know, first and foremost, reduce your waste. Yeah. Be more akamai about how you guys purchase stuff, and, you know, purchasing local. So stuff that's fresh, that's more shelf stable. But two, you know, in food prep and in anything else, there's always going to be waste. And so do a better job at that. If this food is meant to feed a person, so let's do that first rather than throwing it out. But beyond that, let's look at creative ways to utilize that, whether it's animal feed or composting or something like that. Everything that we grow, everything that we produce should be used for something, whether it's something that I'm eating or we're consuming, or something that goes back as a value add product or goes back into the economy, you know, something that's be more aware about, you know, how we're more responsible with the resources that we have.
I'm gonna, the one thing, Dean, I'm gonna do what we always do at Farm Bureau, the way we end it. Buy local, it matters. Okay. And when we talk about buy local, especially for our hospitality industry, not just the food, but our floriculture also. And we know you guys buy a lot to decorate your lobbies, and nurseries always left out of the conversation when we're talking about agriculture right now here in the pandemic. Our nursery men and women are farmers also, and they play a critical role, from the flowers for lei, from the beautiful arrangements that you guys put into your hotel rooms, from the stuff that they buy at the farmers market and the things that they actually order and ship home through you know, FedEx or whatever. Critically important. So buy local, it matters.
Nice. You know, for me, what I would like to see from our hotels and resorts and our hospitality, and especially on the executive level, is I understand that everyone needs to answer to somebody, but I would love it if the dialogue was answering to Hawaii first. And so when we make these decisions, it's sort of like, what would Hawaii do? What is best for Hawaii? And I think that if we answer that question, the other part of, you know, of authenticity and compassion being a part of the P&L, that'll all make sense, because we think about what is best for our home first, everything else falls into place and makes sense. So think
Awesome.
about 808 first.
That's a new mindset. That's a great answer. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys all have great points on that. It's, you know, I think as industries, we need to bind together and go to the legislature and make sure that the legislature are decision makers up there, and the guys that pull the purse strings, you know, understand that all of this works together, and the more it can work together, if you give them a little bit of money to enhance that working together and collaborating, the bigger things can come out of it. And I think that's what I would want to see, a greater partnership between tourism industry, the retail industry, farming, restaurant, and we all kind of understand this sustainability issue. And we need to take it to the ledge and make sure they understand that they're putting the money in the right places to enhance all of our industries together. With that, we're only a couple minutes over time, and that was more for me rather than Brian, I think, today. No, and Brian was kind of loud too. But anyway, thanks guys. Mahalo to everyone at the Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association. And thank you for giving us this opportunity to help give you a little bit of our perspective on how to make Hawaii a better place. Thank you.
Mahalo. Hey, mahalo gang.